We are here again, doing it live, as always. Alright, today is going to be a very interesting stream. I think there's only one idea that I'm going to be going over, but it's going to be almost like a medley pack. It's going to say DVD Creation Forum Review Medley Pack. So today, I am going to be going to the creation review, doing things in general. It's going to be the same, steps as usual. However, I went and pre-looked at everything to see what there was, and there wasn't a huge amount of ideas that was already popped up there. Sound check. So today, wonderful. It's just short things like a killer for Last of Us, things about the Huntress, who I read as the nurse first, and then now my mind says Huntress. Killer ideas and perks, small new killer, a small chapter, new perk ideas, card mods, etc., etc. It's going to essentially be the same review content and things like that. It's just not going to be as in-depth because, well, things change. You're going to hear my phone here for a little bit. Don't worry about it. It's going to go off a couple of times. But I would mute it, but it's semi-important, so, So I woke up, I don't know, maybe half an hour ago, saying that things were happening. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me go jump in the shower. So, yeah, this is where we are. So give me a second. First thing we're going to be looking at is a killer based on the concept from The Last of Us, made on an infection. Actually, no, we're not. This is the one I ixnayed. I don't click on external links, so if you do want to see this, go to the Dead by Daylight, or the forum.deadbydaylight.com/en/category/creations, and you can look at this particular Last of Us killer. Obviously, it's going to be licensed and require a lot of workaround to incorporate a killer like this, but I do not click on external links. That leads to other things. I do not want my IP jacked, even though I use a VPN when I record, just in case. I don't want to incorporate or have any type of ideas or maliciousness or anything like that. I don't want any viruses, trojans, etc., etc. If you use that website, which automatically makes perks and then gives you a link to it, completely fine to do. People will go. It'll look a lot better and a lot more professional. I do recommend porting it over to your computer and then posting it regularly in the forum, though. But I mean, it is what it is. For some other people, it's just a click here, and a click there. But I don't trust it to go through and do anything like that. So, this is why I said things aren't going to be, it's going to be like a medley pack. It's going to be random. It's not going to be any type of, seriousness or anything like that, because it's not going to be the things that are posted for the day aren't going to be just a straight up episode, I guess I could say. I have to reply back to this message, so have fun with the memes. Get a laugh or two. And like I said, throughout this, well, I'm back for one, but throughout this, you're going to be hearing noises from my phone. It kind of is what it is. It's not going to be reoccurring or anything like that. I'll probably only reply back to messages when I get done with the concept, or if it's an extremely long one in portions, when I get done with like each particular paragraph. But yeah, flashlighting the huntress makes her see not so good. I mean, that is true. I'm not gonna play the video, obviously, but yeah, that's kind of the game mechanics. Apparently, there's been a lot of cases of DDoSing. So, yeah, that is another reason why I don't click on these random links that people pop up. If you click on an external link that has any type of IP tracker or leads to an external website that could be made by somebody or anything like that, you're essentially giving up information. Clicking on a random link, which this person might not even know it's a malicious link. It might just be using a website, which I think they are. But if that website's intentions aren't entirely pure, as soon as you click on their link to view their concept and all of that, your IP is grabbed. And when it comes to things like that, depending on how much time and money is invested into the actual IP grabber, it will grab your actual IP address, not your VPN. Everybody nowadays thinks that VPNs make you essentially immortal. And oh, well, if they just send me any types of problems, I'll just change my VPN or I'll change my IP address and everything's going to be fine. Well, the thing about it is, every individual thing that attaches to the internet has its own dedicated and specific IP address. Period. That's it. Your hardware and your computer and things like that has its own type of addresses. They're generally called MAC addresses. MAC addresses, IP addresses are the two things that people can get you with. If you're playing online in a server, and let's say you're running hacks or something like that, and they ban you, then you come back, and then they ban your IP address of the VPN that you're using, because that's what you're going to connect with, generally. And you change your IP address and come back, and you're the type of person that likes to talk crap saying, oh, well, there's nothing you can do to ban me. They're going to ban your hardware. And if they go through a hardware ban, then you're going to have to replace your GPU or CPU or whatever they took. Everything has a MAC address associated with it, hardware-wise, that plugs into your computer. Everything. They can literally tell the Ethernet cord that you're using that you plug in. They can tell everything. Anything that's plugged into your computer is defined through a MAC address or IP address if it only has its own connections and things like that. They will ban your GPU or CPU or whatever, and then you'll no longer be able to do anything on that particular computer you have. Now, there are fluffers and things like that that you can use to try to confuse their servers about your addresses and things like that, but I mean, every time you get banned, it's going to become more and more expensive to play the particular game you're wanting to play. And by that time, if you have to go out and buy a fluffer and everything else, I mean, yeah, it's going to be very expensive at that time. And if you do get a fluffer and you jump back on, all they're gonna do is start banning your fluffers and things like that, and it's just going to be a nightmare for you. They're gonna start banning, your Steam IDs or Epic IDs, so you're gonna have to make different accounts. And it's not going to be just a ban off. It's not going to be a game ban. It's going to be a VAC ban, and you might get an EAC ban and things like that, which is the easy anti-cheat. You keep messing around, they're just going to ban you off Steam or Epic or whatever you're playing on altogether, and they're going to do the same thing. And then anytime you want to play any of the other games you have, you're going to have to use a fluffer and a VPN and a whole bunch of other things and make different accounts. Like I said, if you have the knowledge to go through and get everything done and continue to cheat or do whatever you want to do, fine. But the average person doesn't have the knowledge or the ability to do everything else. So, just don't cheat in the first place. I mean, it's really just that simple. Now, the reason why VPNs and proxy servers and things like that, which, let me go through and explain the difference. Essentially, it's not always this. Like I said, there's always exceptions, but essentially, a proxy server is made specifically for one thing, while VPNs are made for a lot of things. So let's say Minecraft. That was one of the last things that were massively multiplayer online that I played. If I wanted to have a whole bunch of different IPs and everything else for Minecraft, I would go through a proxy server. I can change as many proxies as required, and I can redo, everything, and just keep swapping. So if I'm getting hard banned, I can keep swapping proxies. I get on, play for a little bit, if I think I'm in danger, swap proxy, continue to do what I'm doing. As long as you're not getting rid of your actual account or throwing that information out there and it gets tagged that way, for the most part, you're fine. They can ban you or IP ban you a lot of times, unless they have somebody that knows what they're doing, and you can just keep switching proxies. VPN wise is made for everything. You'll run just one particular IP address until you try to go through a different connection. Every time you run through a proxy, you're going to be assigned a different thing as well. I guess I should go over that. Proxies, it don't matter. If you log out of the game, the next time you log back in, you're going to have a different IP address. You log out of the game, log back in, you're going to have a different IP address. Every time you connect, it's going to be through a different connection. You'll never have the same. Ever. Every time you go in. Unless you have an advanced proxy, which is essentially just a system of VPNs that you can switch out from. Then you get to VPNs. VPNs, you generally are assigned an IP address that you can go through the VPN and mask yourself. You generally keep that specific IP address that the VPN gives you unless you physically ask for another one or change it yourself. Well, I guess remotely ask for another one or change it yourself. So, I mean, you can go in like NordVPN, that lets you go to different countries and things like that, but you'll typically be using one address assigned to each of those. So that one address you have gets banned or something like that, you have to go in and manually switch to another address to get unbanned. VPNs versus proxies. Where proxies, you'll typically be able to do whatever you want without having to worry about anything proxy-wise. VPN-wise, once it's in, it's in. The good thing about proxies versus VPNs is proxies are a lot faster to change things. Let's say you get DDoSed offline or something like that. As soon as the attack happens and you get overwhelmed and disconnected, you're out of that connection. You're done from that proxy. So they can keep hitting that particular IP address on the proxy, which the proxy, is made for this one thing. So it has a lot of security and they generally, you can get cheap proxies, but they're talking about normal proxies. Generally have security and things like that, and DDoS protection, etc., so you don't have to worry about it. A proxy or proxy server is, a huge server that contains all of that information. So, the server's going to protect itself. If there's any issues, the proxy can generally handle it and continue doing what it does. Most DDoS things, it just generally grabs onto the connection. It doesn't allow it to pass, but it doesn't allow it to back out either, and it just holds that DDoS connection like a hand. And when it eventually gets tired and stops sending packets and all of that and says, okay, I'm done, it releases it and lets it go back to where it's going. Then you have other ones that effectively deal with DDoS. As soon as it comes in and they see that something's wrong, they slap it out of the sky and tell it not to come back. Completely, locking their door, you ain't coming back through here. And then you have the active systems that will literally trace it back to its source. That's the expensive ones. It'll trace it all the way back to the source of where it's coming from. And if it's another company or something like that, they'll say, hey, you got somebody on this address doing things they're not supposed to do. You might want to handle this before we smite you. If it's coming from a regular person that doesn't have an IP address or anything like that, depending on what country and how bad they're doing it and how often and all that, some will take legal actions against you. Some will just smite you back. You're going up against the server. They might just, bam, knock you offline and call it a day. When it comes to cyber attacks and things like that, you have the right to defend yourself. If somebody's trying to hack you or DDoS you, as soon as you have that connection, it is ethically sound to go back and smite them back. Now, VPNs, I'll go back to the beginning of what I'm saying. What are they saying? People think that you are absolutely safe as long as you're using a VPN. And that's what the government and everything else wants you to think. You can do whatever you want, and if it comes down to it, just switch VPN. You're safe. Your information's safe. You ain't got to worry about it. Give me 1 second. Alright. And that's what the government, the FBI, all of them want you to think. That you can hide your tracks. Hackers, etc., etc. They all want you to think that you can hide your tracks. And stop things from happening. Well, I'm here to tell you the truth. Your VPN's not going to protect you from anything. What VPN stops is the average Joe's from pulling your actual IP address and things like that. Your average Joe DDoS attack where they just try to flood you offline and things like that. You then just change the connection that you're going through and let the VPN itself, which is virtual private network, not proxy server, it's a virtual private network. And you can let the network take the hit. Some VPNs are huge, like NordVPN, I hear a lot, and I think Atlas or something like that's a thing, I don't know. If it's a huge VPN system and they have a lot of VPNs going at the same time, cool. If it's a not so good VPN and it's a really small type of thing, that DDoS attack can take that entire network down. Boom. And it doesn't matter how much you try to switch between everything. Once the VPN goes down, it's down until the DDoS attack stops so they can recover. So keep that in mind. Now, the reason why I say you're not safe is VPN only gives you, let's say, a buffer. It's essentially, if you're going to rob a bank, it's a mask that you can put over your face, so nobody can see what your face looks like. It doesn't protect your body. It doesn't protect you from leaving any type of, skin, hair, saliva, any type of DNA sample at the scene. It doesn't protect you from doing any of that. The only thing it does is it hides your face. People can identify you a million of other different ways. That's not just looking at your face. That's what people are most worried about while they use a VPN. They don't want the government or anything else tracking them and revealing who their face is. Hiding your face nowadays isn't good enough. They'll see, your patterns, where you go, how you walk. They'll grab your DNA evidence or residual information that you leave when you're on that website and things like that. There's a lot of different ways to track you. Then, when it comes down to it, if you're doing something, like super illegal that the government has to come in, they're just going to walk in, snatch the mask off of you, handcuff you, and tell you to come on. VPNs will not protect you against the government if they're doing a serious search. It'll stop you against, normal filters, normal scanners, and normal people that don't know what they're doing. Like I said, I was an ethical hacker / penetration tester for about a year. The things you learn being out in the field is amazing. So essentially how a VPN works is your computer sends a signal out to whatever network it is. I'm going to skip the internet service provider and all of that other crap because now you're talking about a whole bunch of different things. But I'm just going to go from basic, your connection to VPN to server. Your computer sends connection over to a server. Well, it sends a request, but like I said, I'm not going to go into the details of requests and advertisements and all of that bull crap. If you want to learn, you can take a networking class or anything like that to learn about how computers actually connect to each other and how networks connect to each other and the differences between TCP and IP and all of that other stuff. Take a class on them. It's free if you're interested in that. I'm going to stick to the basic nitty-gritty. Your computer connects to this VPN. The VPN then listens to what your computer wants to go to. It takes in all the information. And then it shoots out a connection to wherever you want to go. Let's say Google, for example. Now, from there, well, hang on. I think I do need to explain how VPNs work. So your IP address, let's say, is 1. You send it to, and IP addresses are longer than just one single digit, by the way. But if you want to learn about that, again, take a class. Let's say your IP address is 1. You connect to the VPN, which assigns and subnet mask and all of that, and assigns your IP address 2. You are now 2 in their network, but you're 1 on your computer. So 1 connects to 2, being the VPN. 2 connects to Google, which in this case will be 3. 3 sends all the data back to 2. 2 then takes all the data and then passes it through back to 1. So in this case, the VPN is, like I said, is like a mask over your face, or you can say 2 people are meeting, 1 and 3, and the VPN's just a sheet hanging so you can't see each other. But the thing about it is, the information that's going back and forth could have bugs on it, could have, tracers on it and things like that. We call those packets. When you're sending a packet from 1 through 2 into 3, 3 sends packets into 2, 2 forwards into 1. There's nothing there monitoring most VPNs unless you pay for, like a high security VPN. There's no security there. That's where your issue comes, but from the packets going from 1 to 3, from 3 to 1, that ongoing connection through a proxy. Now, if 3 sends a request saying, hey, 2, where are you from? 2's going to say, I'm from, wherever. That's them generally asking. They're going to pull whatever the VPN's located at, and it's going to pull that. China, Russia, America, could be, somewhere else. And that's how that protects you from any general, inquiry into your actual address or information. Who are you? The VPN says who they are. Are you still here? The VPN says yes, And it's essentially they're speaking into a wall, and you're speaking into a wall or into a third-party person, and they're running back and forth. Most VPNs don't have any type of security. The third-party person doesn't check any information going through because, well, it's kind of illegal. If you put your credit card or social security information or something like that into an American, let's say, VPN, and they hold that information, well, I guess I can't really say hold. They illegally hold that information. They're using it for malicious purposes, etc., etc. They can get into a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. And if another country's VPN does that, then you get to spying and a whole bunch of other things, and you get the Facebook things that have been happening all over again, and the Instagram and all that, where people are being called spies and selling of U.S. information, and people get in trouble for that. So they don't, unless you have the enhanced security and things like that for them to scan everything and make sure there's no viruses or tracers or anything in there. But all he is just the messenger boy. If 3 decides they're going to send you a packet with malicious content in it, say a Trojan or a tracer or an IP grabber or something like that, it's then going to be handed back to 1. As soon as it goes to 1 and 1 starts, interacting with it, if they don't immediately, bam, stop that at the root of the problem, 1's information is now going to 3. It doesn't matter how many VPNs, how many different proxies or anything that you change, which proxy is probably the best thing to go through here because it's literally a proxy based off negotiation. It's a server. So then, bang. From that point in time, they have your actual IP address. They have your information, who you are, and all of that. If it has any type of malicious content inside of it, they can install a backdoor into your computer and all of that. And then they'll have your regular conversation going through VPN, and they'll connect all the way through a backdoor that's being set up as you're talking to them. And they'll simply just, bam, connect, do whatever they want to do in this backdoor that you probably won't ever be able to see. And next thing you know, your accounts are being hacked, your information, all of that other stuff. Most people then are like, oh man, I got a virus from somewhere. I don't really know where, and you start questioning it. Because then you go back, you look through the files and everything, and you scan the files that you just had with this person you talked to. And you're like, well, I don't see any viruses there. And the thing is, they sent you a packet that really undetectable, that'll fly right under your firewall and antivirus and things like that, unless you're paying for some really bomb ass stuff. They'll just send something, slide it under the table, or hand it to the messenger. The messenger hands it to you. It infects your computer. Generally, they like to access the window files and implant themselves there. Next thing you know, you got a backdoor into your computer. And that backdoor can sit there for a long time. I'll be back in a second, and I'll keep going on. Alright. But yeah, they'll basically install a backdoor into your computer, and once that's, implanted, they can have access to your computer anytime they want to, and it'll just sit there. They'll let it sit there for as long as possible. Now, what your computer now has become is a node. Node it's an old terminology term, hacker wise. It's you've been added to essentially their network of computers that they hacked. You find that your computer starts slowing down randomly and you don't know what's going on or anything like that, somebody's probably using the resources of your computer to get something done. Your computer has now become essentially a proxy, or essentially, a VPN, I guess, to make it to where you can understand it. They can now send information to your computer and then make your computer send out information to other places. You are a node. It's not good. Some hackers use about 30% of your computer. If you have a beastly computer, you might not even notice it. It might not slow you down at all. But if you have a very good computer, most hackers will take that 30% that you're not using and they'll Bitcoin mine with it if your computer's set up for it. So you'll be noticing maybe a little bit of slowdown or something like that, which most people will just knock off as old age or hardware problems or something like that. And they'll be Bitcoin mining with your computer in the background. If you're the type of person to leave your computer on throughout the day, they'll find out whenever, you're not active during the day, and they'll use up a significant amount of time, Bitcoin mining. All of your computer's resources when you're not around will be used, and your computer will be running day in and day out. There won't be any rest, no shutdown, no restart, anything like that. Every day, like a leech, they'll just keep using it to mine and mine and mine and mine until you get wise and try to delete, get them off of your system. Or get, antivirus or something like that, pay for something that's actually good and get all of that wiped and cleaned up, or reinstall Windows. Most things don't mess with BIOS or anything like that. They like to go into files. So, reinstalling Windows, you're going to lose everything, but it is one of the more confident you can get rid of everything ways. But that's if they allow you to get into the particular systems to wipe everything. Sometimes you can try to do a Windows update, and if you don't know how to get into safe mode and all of that other things to disconnect yourself from online and keep any of those active folders from activating, you'll try to do that and it'll be like, nope, cannot reset Windows. And you'll be like, well, I'm using a CD and all of that, and you'll keep trying to reset it and it'll keep saying, nope, you can't reset Windows. It's because you don't know how to get into safe mode and take yourself offline so none of that can actually go through, and then reset everything. Or reformat your particular drives and then let the CD you have in, or flash drive or whatever, boot up from that and then reinstall everything. There's ways around everything. That goes both ways. There's ways around the VPN, there's ways around the getting hacked on the VPN. And all it takes is one click to ruin your computer and ruin everything that you've built up over time. VPNs do not protect you, people. Not like you think it is. It's not the end all be all. Oh, well, I'm getting DDoSed. Well, I'm just going to switch to another connection and that DDoS will go away. And people are very smug about that. Like, anybody that knows what they're doing, as soon they're going to send a, what we call, safety packet to your computer. Generally, safety packets won't even be picked up by your firewall because they're just innocent packets. They're going to send it through. It's going to hit your computer. Your computer is going to send the connection back to them saying that, hey, I received your packet. As soon as that safety packet goes in, which is going to have malicious things in it, it's going to say, hey, which it could be just a picture. It could be just a one word A on a text file or all of that, and the rest be hidden. As soon as your computer receives that and says that everything's hunky-dory, boom, they have a hook on you. They send a DDoS connection through whatever you're doing. You switch to another VPN or another connection or another IP address, boom, they just keep running the same DDoS program. Straight through again. Bang. You switch to another IP. Boom. They run the same DDoS program. Through again. They call it a denial of service for a reason. It's to keep you from accessing any service. DDoSing is heavily illegal. So if you ever plan online and somebody says they're going to DDoS you and they actually do it, that's a cyber criminal act. It's illegal in the United States, at least. If they live in the United States, you can sue them. You can take them to court. You can send them to jail. The fine on that is very hefty. It's a very serious thing. But there's a lot of things that people do daily online that they don't realize can severely impact your life because, well, everybody wants to be a keyboard gangster and talk crap to each other. But that's about the gist of everything that I want to tell you. I'm not going to teach you how to protect yourself against it. I'm not going to teach you, the proper steps. The only thing I'm going to tell you is don't click on links that are like this. And do not stay connected to a link that doesn't have this lock. This lock means it is secure. If you can click on the lock, it tells you connection is secure. It tells you how many cookies they're using. It tells you site settings and things like that. If the connection is not secure, then you have an open connection and anything could happen. That's one of the things you can look for to see if anything's safe. If you click on some place that doesn't have a secure connection, generally Google will pop up a thing saying this connection's not secure, and it'll try to get you to go back to a safer site. But you can hit the advanced button and continue or proceed anyway. They give you the option to. Just don't click random things, even if they're in safe things. If you see a link pop up on Walmart that isn't supposed to be there or it looks fishy, don't click it. If you are going to click it on something that's not that important if you lose it. Keep in mind, though, they can infect more than just computers. They can infect entire networks. If everything is connected to the same Wi-Fi and you enable the network system to where, you click on your files or something like that and you can see other people's devices, etc., etc. Anything that's on that network can be targeted. I can send a packet to your phone, or you think you're, if my phone gets a virus, it doesn't matter. I can send something to your phone, and anything that's on your phone's network, I can now send things to, if you already have that, allowed for devices. I keep everything separate. My computer that I'm using now, because, well, I was an ethical hacker and all of that, doesn't even have any type of Wi-Fi on it. It's only Ethernet. If I come into an issue to where things are looking shady, or I see that I'm being traced, or anything like that, I literally pull the plug. As soon as I do that, there is no way to force a connection through to my computer. Getting rid of Wi-Fi, very good, but you can't connect to anything at a distance. That's one of the very much surefire ways to know that you're not being messed with. Just because you turn your computer off, if it still has power going to it and things like that, or some way to externally start your computer, it could still be, taken advantage of. If you have Wi-Fi, they can take advantage of it in a numerous amount of ways. This computer I built by myself to the specifics of what I needed it for. There's no Wi-Fi adapter in there. You're not going to be able to get on your cell phone or get on something, or it's also not hooked to my specific network. It's connected through the Wi-Fi, which or not the Wi-Fi, it's connected through the router, which if you wanted to hit my computer, that's the way you would have to go through past the network directly to the router. Well, I guess it goes router then the network, so backwards. You would have to connect to router and then connect to my computer. Anybody taking that network classes or anything like that, routers go from routers to routers. The routers then, route things to different networks. You go all the way through, typically to another router on the other end, and it sends the connection out. If it's a small network, the same router might handle incoming and outgoing. You might just go straight through one and out the other side. But typically, businesses or people that have large networks, you have a network or a router that handles incoming, and then you'll have a router that handles outgoing connections. And they send things through different networks and a whole bunch of different lines, and you can go essentially anywhere as long as there's not a block. That's generally how the basis of internet works. Long story short, you are not as safe as you think you are. As long as you're connected to a Wi-Fi network, you're not safe. When I had all of my ethical hacking things on my computer, I could send a ping to your computer, which I can then use if it has Wi-Fi on it or anything like that. I can use that to get into everything else, and from there I can hack your phone, I can hack your computer, I can hack your brother's laptop in the other room, and I can hack anything and everything on that particular network, or connect it through Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi is a Wi-Fi network. And it's that much easier if you have, let's say, something that allows something permission. Like, let's say Windows has the thing where you can send apps and everything else from your phone to your computer and continue from where you left off. If you have that, for example, I can just jump into your phone and have a direct connection to your computer and continue doing what I'm doing. It's very easy than happen to set things up or happen to hack through and find everything. You save me quite a bit of time. But I guess it doesn't take extremely long on most people because they don't pay for anything. They go through Windows Defender. Windows Defender is decent, don't get me wrong. But Windows Defender can't defend against itself. If I get one file into your Windows Defender can't protect itself. Now, if you take it offline and do everything like you're supposed to do and have it scan itself offline, it can find a majority of things, but it's nowhere near perfect. You'll get anywhere from, well, depending on, what they're trying to hit you with, anywhere from a 98% effectiveness all the way down to a 90%. It's a 90 to 98% effectiveness. That 2% of things, they aren't going to get. And if you are knowledgeable, like I am, about the 2% of things that generally get through the actual scanner itself, then it's very easy, what you need to send to computer or what you need to do to phones or anything like that to get to where you need to go. Glad I named this Medley pack, but this is just kind of food for thought for anybody that stops by this live stream either now or later, that, hey, I got a VPN and maybe I'm not as safe as I am. Maybe I need to stop doing things. Again, I generally call one particular friend out, but this time I have another friend who likes to torrent a lot of free things. It's not macho or anything like this. This is a completely different person. But he likes to torrent a lot of things, a lot of movies, a lot of games to essentially play them free. He uses a VPN like everybody else does when they're running, Kodi or anything else to get free games, movies, etc., etc. And the thing is, running the program Kodi and all of that, it's completely legal. It's illegal, though, to get things that you haven't paid for off of them. So the government can't arrest you for running Kodi, and I'm using Kodi because that's one of the things I can just think of off the top of my mind. You can run Kodi on everything you have. If the government walks in, they can't arrest you for it. But if they find, free downloaded goods that should have been paid for, that's when you've broken the law. But, going to different websites, torrenting things, etc., etc., running antivirus afterwards when you get done to clean up any malicious files that are left over. Things like that. Well, remember I said, even General antivirus will only find 98%. Well, let's say Windows Defender in particular can find 98%. There are some that you can pay for that they have free trials and things like that that have a higher effectiveness rate. But I mean, those rates are subject to change. They stay up to date on everything, but if they just overlook something or they don't update their systems in time, there's a vulnerability. Which is why you see a lot of Windows updates coming out all the time, because this is the digital era. Things are updating and changing every day, daily. Things are changing. And people are forever pushing limits. And those limits have to be coded to, protect people. So if you're not a person that likes to update, or at least search for updates for a long time, and your computer starts running slow and doing all kinds of other things, you might want to grab that update. If you're not searching for updates weekly, there's an issue. I know big businesses and things like that only want to search for updates monthly, and they have a specific time where they search for all updates where they're not obstructing their business, because you have to update and restart and etc., etc. Some businesses go years without doing anything, but I mean, your average business isn't going to be hacked unless you're well known, like to have the Microsoft hacks and the Sony hacks and things like that. Or Walmart or something like that, the super well known huge companies where hackers can actually get some sort of valuable information, be it credit cards or something like that, are generally when things are going to be hacked. Not a small businesses that sells, I don't know, exhaust pipes, for example. All you do is sell exhaust pipes. That's what you specialize in. You're probably not going to be in too much danger of getting hacked unless you piss off a customer that knows what they're doing. So, anyway, that's the end of that. I'm going to get back into doing reviews. I figured I would just go off on a small tangent. Besides psychology, things like that, I do sometimes throw in little tidbits of that, things like that, when I'm giving lectures. Just to give you that kind of extra heads up. There's a lot of things people think they're safe doing, but you actually ain't doing. And I know some smart butts already saying, well, Q, I could be hit by a car any day. The chances of me getting hit by a car, getting struck by lightning, is about the same. And it's like, no, you're real wrong. I guarantee most people have clicked on something in their life that has negatively affected their computer, and either their antivirus or something else blocked the connection coming through right then and there. And they have no idea. Because I know there's somebody out there saying, I've never had a virus, a Trojan, or nothing. I've never had to worry about it, anything like that. I guarantee you, lots of things have tried to get into your computer, but they're either outdated, or Windows or whatever you're running has taken care of it without a problem. Your antivirus will not alert you to everything that tries to connect to your computer or tries to maliciously hurt your computer. It will tell you if, main things. It tells you about issues that you need to possibly address. If you go to a website and it pops up, website, so-and-so and so-and-so was blocked on website. Then they are warning you that, hey, this website has tried something malicious and it's something that you should pay attention to, because they could probably get through and destroy your entire computer. We joke about deleting the Windows 32 folder, to completely take somebody's computer out, But these things exist, especially if you have like a backdoor or something like that in somebody else's computer. You've generally installed a black hole or a worm or something like that that's going to destroy everything. Said if the cops get involved or something else, you're gonna want to delete all of your information to make everything inaccessible. So you're gonna activate this, and the entire computer, all the files in it, everything's going to be deleted, destroyed, absolutely just maimed. And if they catch on to it, which I mean, most cases, most people don't, because background files that the person using their actual computer are going to be, or the person using the computer that can't see as they're working on it. Like just me just moving my mouse like this, a lot of background files are happening and a lot of programming are happening depending on what I'm, scrolling over, mousing over, etc., etc. And the issue you get from this is that, give me a second. They can delete a majority of your files and you still be online and not know none the wiser. It's when when you go through everything and get to that point to where you can't delete anything that they can physically see, is when people are like, oh crap, there's something on my computer, it's deleting all my files. By that time, millions of files have already been deleted off your computer. They're just now getting to the files that, they can't hide anymore. They're deleting program files that are going to make your computer do things weird and slow down and do all kinds of other crazy things. By the time you've noticed that something's happened, it's too late. Everything's gone for the most part, and they're just cleaning up the rest. And most people, will unplug their computer or do something like that. Well, the program, when it stops running, does the same thing as like Windows Updater, which, like I said, most like to imprint things in Windows files. And it sits there, and as soon as it gets a connection back and your computer's repowered on, it just resumes doing what it's doing. It's very hard to get past something that's already dug itself into your computer. It doesn't matter if you're online or offline, because it's a program being ran in your computer itself. And if you don't know how to deal with that, it's going to eat everything on your computer. I'm talking about it's going to eat your hard drive files, all of that. It's going to eat your BIOS files. It's going to eat everything, leaving your computer just parts. And if it's super malicious and they mess with your BIOS, you're going to be buying another motherboard and essentially another everything. But definitely going to be buying another motherboard if it fries that and messes with your BIOS and things like that. So you have to be extremely, extremely careful about what you're doing. Give me a moment. All right. But that is the way things go. Like I said, internet security isn't very much pushed. And it's been simplified to, hey, just have Windows Defender or Malwarebytes or some other popular. I don't like McAfee. McAfee ruined the computer for me. I know they've gotten better over the years, but I just can't. I can't do it. So McAfee, this happened a long, long time ago. The way McAfee used to be set up is they used to essentially install their antivirus used to technically have viruses and things like that inside of them. That's how they operated. And you can go to McAfee and they'll say, no, no, it's got nothing like that. It's all just programming and all this. I'm like, no. Long story short, it has essentially viruses and things like that inside of them. I guess you can call them positive viruses because they use those viruses to go into your computer and block other things from happening, but it's still essentially a virus. I was running McAfee on my computer, and I used to know the exact name of it. I don't know. I came across a particular virus that specifically targeted McAfee systems. It was known for it. And since they were already running viruses and things like that, only thing this virus did was, well, I guess it was a Trojan, but the only thing it did was rewrite how the McAfee systems work. And instead of them being now helpful viruses that go in and do everything and do things like that, or helpful programs, I should say, they became negative acting programs. And it was trying to protect my system against everything because it was rewrote. So instead of protecting files, it was deleting files and trying to, basically the polar opposite of what antivirus should do. It was inciting viruses and doing all kinds of other bullcrap. And after I figured that out and went through all of that, I never used McAfee again. Nowadays, McAfee's clean. I mean, you can trust them with your computer and things like that. It's just a bad experience thing that I'm not going to give them a second chance when it comes to my computer and builds and things like that. I'd trust Windows Defender over McAfee. But that's me personally. I'm not ragging on them. If you have McAfee, be happy, be proud. Don't panic. Most antiviruses are decent right now, so you don't have to worry about them. Alright, I think I went on a long enough tangent. Hello, Galanonim. Glad you stopped by. If only for a moment. I think it was the live stream before the last one. Yesterday or something like that. Before the one I did yesterday. I personally thanked you from stopping by, and I said a bunch of other encouraging things to you. I do appreciate you stopping by, but real life comes first. Don't feel the need to stop by every day, especially if it inconveniences you or if it's something you gotta go out of your way to do. I'll probably be here. And even if I'm not, you can always just send me a message or reply in a video or join the Discord or something like that. Plenty of ways to get a hold of me that I'll see. At least till I start doing something different in my life. But I do appreciate you stopping by. Just don't feel obligated to. Like I said, I added your name to most of my YouTube descriptions. So even if I do somehow forget about you, just say, hey Q, look at your video description from back when you're doing alternative killer reviews or something like that, or this particular video or something weird like that. Like, all I gotta do is go back, and if I look at the you have your special shout out right there. So even if I forget about you, you can always remind me by saying, man, I was in your description on a couple of your streams back in the day, Hey, I'm back. I finished my internship. I'm now a professional. Or anything like that. You're always there. You earned your place. So don't worry about it. Oh, you're welcome. You are welcome. Did that update? Yeah, that update. You seen that too. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I replied back in a message. I even said some things on stream and all of that. So, you've earned your place, your seat on the couch. I guess I could say it's always there for you. And if you do ever decide to, one day, in the future or whenever, hey, I feel like gaming, and you want to play Dead by Daylight or something like that, if the game is still up by that time, or Rocket League or some other game that I have, just hit me up, Say, hey, Key, you want to play? Like, heck, I'll start up a stream if you want, and we can just play, or we can play privately, or do whatever. It is what it is. But I've wasted a lot of time, and let's see. There you go. A little over an hour. It's not too bad or too terrible. But yeah, in the creation forum, there's really not a lot of things to go over. This is why I named it a medley. It's a Dead by Daylight creation medley. It's just going to be a whole bunch of different things thrown together. And I think I might have enough time to throw in some Splinter Cell afterwards too. I'm towards the midpoint of the game. I want to say end, but I think it's just midpoint. But anyway, let's go. Killer idea and his perks. I don't expect this to be long because the actual idea, it says idea and perks. It doesn't say anything about chapters or anything like that, but let's see. Yes, it's not very long. It's another vampire, though. I've read a lot of different concepts on vampires. I've even added in my own on top of theirs. So I wonder if this is going to be unique or just a repeat. This killer's a vampire. Weapon, his claws. The ability, the Mist of Thirst. Gain the ability to suck blood from the source, or survivors. The vampire can summon the mist from his hands and drag a healthy survivor near him by a stream of the mist. It drags them 2 meters closer to them, but can be longer with add-ons. But survivors that are on an injured state will lose blood if they get dragged. So, from base ability up to this point, he shoots out a mist that can grab survivors and pull them back for 2 meters. I'd say, just to make things a little bit easier, I would just make it to where survivors are just held in place for X amount of time, so they don't have to do a pullback animation. I mean, it's not going to be hard to do a pullback animation, but you hit a survivor with mist, survivor's frozen in place for... Well, they're losing 2 meters and you're gaining 2 meters, so that's a second worth of time. Survivor's held in place for a second. But I guess if they're on the other side of a pallet, it makes sense to pull them back through the pallet to where you can hit them. I guess the pull is fine for pallet plays and trying to catch survivors from jumping through windows. But I mean, you can also just have some sort of effect that prevents them from doing actions like the doctor does for that particular time, and it would be essentially the same. Either or. And if a survivor is already in the injured state, you're essentially sucking out their life source, or their blood, as they're getting dragged. I think it would last a lot better, though, if it was a hold them in place type of deal, though. You hit them if they're injured as you're getting that mist, or that line that's locked into them. Blood follows along the line, and then, everything continues. Very quick animation. A bar then appears like the min bar, that's but red. So it's the deep wound status effect bar, but it's red, okay? Survivors that lose all of their blood, shown if the bar is gray/white, will gain the slow and blind status effect, and can gain other things with add-ons. Okay, once the blood of the survivor is sucked out, they get status effects. Gotcha. Slow being, I guess, hindered, which is a 10% reduction in speed. But why blind? The ability to not be able to see auras. That's interesting. But survivors can gain a blood bag with never-ending blood bags scattered around the map. Blood bags is interesting. I would be cheeky if I was behavior, and I would use the plague's blood altar, or not blood altar, they're purge altars. Because, it does turn red after the gunk has accumulated. You could literally just reskin that and use the same red effect to be blood, and just have survivors drink from it. But anyway, if the vampire drags enough survivors, you'll gain tier. So there's a tier effect. Successful basic animation 5% slower. So it's like, wait. So it's going to take longer to recover from basic attacks. Vaulting speed is increased by 10%. Successful basic attack animation is 5% slower. That's some Michael Myers things right there. Vaulting speed is increased by 10%, movement speed 15%, tear radius is decreased by 15%. Yeah, this is Michael Myers' stats, I'm pretty sure. For the tier 1. Successful basic attack animation 10% slower. Vaulting speed increased by 15%, movement speed increased by 20%, tear radius decreased by 25%. So the more you tier up, the less of a tear radius that you have. Interesting. Only thing I have an issue with is it only affects basic attacks animation, correct? So if I continue just to use lunge attacks every time, I can essentially bypass this basic attack animation, which most killers in Dead by Daylight don't really use basic attacks until they get into a specifically high level, like iridescent, and I think gold's before that now. It goes gold iridescent. A little bit of higher gold and then iridescent generally will use basic attacks when survivors are right in front of them. Anybody else, it's all lunge attacks all day. And this only affects basic attacks, which you will rarely get. So the only thing this really drags down is any perks that are activated per basic attack. Now this could be backwards and they meant to make the animation faster per tier, but I think they're going for a pseudo Michael Myers type thing. To where vaulting speed's faster, movement speed becomes pseudo faster, but everything else is slower. Like your lunges, well, I guess in this case the lunge isn't slower, but the basic attack animation is going to be slower because you're blood starved. Basic attack animation being 5% slower isn't really gonna do much. I don't think. Because it's what, 3 seconds or something like that off of a basic attack? And 5% of 3 seconds ain't much. Heck, 10% of 3 seconds ain't much. So those two things are kind of negligible. Unless, you're really needing that speed. But I mean, Unrelenting Force will counteract that and give you more. Vaulting speed. Very good. Very good indeed. Any type of vaulting speed that you can get as killer is good. Even if it's just a measly 1%, it's still faster than base. When you're window faking and jumping through windows and things like that, the faster you can get through that, the less distance a survivor can get on you. Movement speed. I don't know what 20% or 4.6 is, even though I feel like I do this every time. 20% of 4.6 is equal to 0.92. I've definitely done this a lot. So you're getting 0.92. That's what, 5.52? Yeah, you'll have 5.52 speed. At tier 2. And a 25% decrease in tear radius, which is easy because it's 1/4 of 32, being 8. So you would have 24 meters of tear radius at tier 2. 24 meters of tear radius ain't bad. Seems fairly balanced for the most part. Because even if you're near a survivor, it's still going to take you... Well, I mean, this particular killer, it's only going to take like 4 seconds to get to. But still plenty of time for survivors to react, etc., etc., because there's going to be objects and walls and everything else. Not that big of a deal. The movement speed increase is ridiculous. Way, way, way too ridiculous. Unless tier 3 is like Michael Myers and you end up exposing survivors, you're going to want to stay in tier 2 and never go to tier 3 for this speed boost. But let's see. Tier 3, gain the ability to disguise as a crow. Survivor if you have the iridescent add-on. I don't know any vampire by lore that can disguise as a survivor, but interesting. Gain the undetected status effect. While in disguise, vampire cannot be blinded by flashlight or stun grenade. Interesting. Again, I'm assuming you're... Well, no, because that wouldn't make sense. So yeah, in tier 3, how this is wrote out, when you're in tier 3, you go back to base killer stats, and then you gain the ability to disguise. Because if you kept everything, this would have to scale and do everything else on top of that. If you want to keep the same effects from tier 3 or tier 2 on tier 3, you need to add in a clause that you keep everything from previous tier plus all of this. So I'm going to take this literally as it's wrote, and once you get out of tier 2, you go back to base speed in tier 3, you're completely satiated and all of that, and now you can disguise. Again, why would I ever want to go to tier 3 when I can just stay tier 2 and have this extra 20% movement speed, which is ridiculous, by the way. Again, survivors move at 4 meters per second, and you're getting an extra meter and a half on them per second. That is ridiculous speed. So all of this definitely needs to be nerfed. And just as a counterclaim as to why it needs to be nerfed, imagine running other speed perks with this. If you ran the right perks or speed perks with this, you can get a lot of speed. And when it comes to things like, I always like to throw Bubba, which has these quartz that give him even more speed, or any other killer, even Nurse at this point, would benefit from using that. And then Noad, adding an extra 4 or 5% into everything and exposing survivors once the exit gates are powered, you're going to be a zooming machine. There's no point in playing Hillbilly anymore because you're going to run essentially at the rate that he moves. You're going to be zooming across map. One hit downing everything as soon as the exit gates are powered. If you're running blood warding or something like that, you can essentially just deck somebody, pick them up, throw them on hook, have 2 other type of speed perks associated with that, and wipe the entire lobby every time. So, I mean, you have a decent start here, but you're going to have to rebalance all of this. Disguise, I ain't seeing it, bro. The ability to disguise as a crow, okay, cool. I can see that. But that's it? To be undetectable and disguise as a crow? So you're essentially just going to be sitting somewhere on a corner or something like that. Of course, it's going to take, time for you to change from a crow back into a regular vampire. Or if it's going to be instantaneous, it's going to have to, blind you or produce some sort of smoke or mist. So you can't just, click a button and immediately get a hit. It says disguise as a crow, so I'm going to assume it's just wherever you're standing at. In the crow form, you can't move or anything like that, so you're essentially playing just like prop hunt, but unable to move. So you're just boom. Survivor comes to Jen, boom, you teleport back. You use your super increases speed to get that first hit. You catch right back up to them after hitting them, essentially almost instantaneously, and then you down them. But your tier 3 needs a lot more oomph than just the ability to disguise. It also needs to be defined further. I mean, I understand this is just kind of an idea that's thrown out there, but we need to know what your mind's thinking and to have less left to the imagination. Long story short, uses blood like Oni, drags survivor near him like Death Stinger, has blood bags that help survivor just like Plague, but can't interact with them, has tiers like Myers and Nemesis. And, well, that typically brought up the thing that I was going to say after finishing this entire first concept is you have a hybrid killer of a lot of different things shoved into one thing. Give me a moment. I didn't even hear my phone go off. I wish I could talk about what's going on in the background, but I cannot. Because I'm very heavily opinionated on that particular issue, but I'm not going to go over it. It's not my business. But yeah, this killer is a whole bunch of different killers, aspects combined into one. Saying that, I can't recommend it for an alternative killer or anything like that. It's not flushed out enough and it doesn't provide a lot of detail. I mean, he also only has 2 posts, so I mean, it'll get better over time. But yeah, it's just a whole bunch of different kinds of killers combined into one. I went over an interesting concept the other day that I threw in on my own as, I threw in on with their concept. It was like a mimic style of ability. And it used add-ons from survivors' items and things like that to typically RNG its own add-ons for particular killers. It was a perk, though, not a killer. It's a perk. Anyway, let's get down to perks. Bloodthirst. The blood that have bled from the survivor strengthen your thirst. Every 4 or 5... Okay, I'm going to stop right here. This. One guy did this, and now everybody that's incorporating perks are doing this. If it's not something that needs to be defined, don't define it with tiers like this. You don't need to have this going down in tiers and then this going down in tiers. Have one of these be a singular number and then have the other one being scaling, or vice versa. Anyway, every 5, 4, or 3, so let's say 3 successful hits from basic attacks, every survivor within 32 meters, your scaling's a bit wonky there, that is on the injured state or dying state are revealed to the killer. Okay, so this particular thing right here is the same as it's not infectious fright, is it? I don't think that's the one I'm thinking of. I think that one's just the one that makes you scream. I clicked on the wrong thing. I wanted to go perks. We go infectious fright. Nope. Yeah. Infectious fright. Whenever a survivor is put into the dying state by any means, all other survivors within your tear radius will scream and reveal their current location to you for 6 seconds. It is infectious fright that I was thinking of. This is infectious fright. Just reword it. And then buffed to injured state or dying state. Literally infectious fright, but buffed. It goes from specific successful attacks instead of just being in a dying state. And every injured or dying survivor, their location is revealed to you. Now, unlike infectious fright, who clarifies, which he should have really looked at this before adding anything, and like I said, if you're going to make a perk, take the time to just press Control F or search function and search for perks that are like your particular perk to make sure you're not interfering or interrupting their particular already balanced perk. They incorporated dying state by any means. All other survivors within tear radius, there's your activation. They scream in reveal. That's what it does. Current location, and then it gives you a time. Everything is for the most part defined and doesn't make you think, well, what is this, that, or that? Everything's been defined here. Very well. Then you come back to here, to a person who also dying state is the activation, tear radius is the distance, and there's also scaling with the time. There's one method of scaling. That's all you need. Whereas this person does every blank successful hits, survivors within blank meters are revealed to the killer. 32 meters is tear radius. So I go 14, 20, and 32, and just take the 32 and say every survivor within tear radius that is injured or dying are revealed to the killer. It shortens that, gets rid of this unnecessary scaling, because it's going from completely useless to useless around gens to tear radius when it comes to this. Making it every successful hit from basic attack, or every specific amount. One, you should probably go with some sort of token system or something like that, but I mean, it can be a scalable perk and be completely fine. But I would recommend token systems just to keep everything very simply and easily read, everything, perfectly done. The problem you have here is it says every 5, 4, or 3 successful hits. Let's go with the 3 in this case. It only takes 2 hits to down a survivor. So you would have to hit a survivor, they would have to heal up, you would have to hit that survivor 2 more times, and on that downing hit, that's when this would activate. Because if you want this to store and just be, hits that happen, etc., etc., it needs to be converted into some sort of token. So, the game itself can understand that once per activation, you get something built up, and as soon as you hit somebody, then tokens can or cannot be spent, and then an effect activates. I mean, I understand what you're saying by base, but this coded into the game's going to look at you with a question mark and go, okay, how do you want to incorporate this? This is very nitpicky of me, and it's not really that important, but I mean, if you're going to use, the perk layout and things like that, and try to run it like that, I mean, it should be defined as how the game has defined it. But like I said, this is just a rough draft or a basic idea, so there's no need for it to be really drawn out. But I mean, if this gets attention and people like how things sound, he's going to have to go back through and add things. So I'm just kind of an ounce of prevention, here. So let's say this is converted into a token perk. Every 3 hits, every survivor within your terror radius gets affected. If they're injured or dying, they're revealed to killer. Needs to be defined how long. And, use infectious fright as kind of a template, but don't copy it. Because as of now, I would have to say no, this perk isn't any good, because it's literally infectious fright, just buffed and then undefined. Cursed Coffin, you would think this would be some sort of hex or anything like that, because it literally says cursed in its name, but or a scourge hook or something activated with the word cursed there. But I don't know. The survivors made their own graves. Every time a survivor enters a locker, the entity will block the locker for 13 seconds, trapping the survivor in. The locker that contains the survivor then makes a notification for the killer and be highlighted. The survivor cannot leave until the entity unblocks the locker or grabbed by the killer. Well, anytime that the entity blocks something, that means killer and survivors cannot interact with it. So if you're going to block a survivor into a locker for 13 seconds, that means that the killer cannot interact with said locker until the entity unblocks it. The entity is the almighty being here. It is the one in control. Survivors and killers both obey the rules of the entity. When the entity blocks something, you are not to activate, or you are not to interact with it. So, if you want to make this interactable, as soon as the killer becomes within the tear radius, the tear radius comes within the killer, then you should make the effect disappear. Now, if it's a stealth killer, and for good reason, they have no tear radius when they're in their stealth mode. Which is a very good balance, because stealth killers can literally just hide around a corner stealthily for a survivor to get out of a locker, then attack them. Stealth killers shouldn't be able to take advantage of this particular situation. Me personally, I would just incorporate it into the killer itself. You give your killer the ability to turn into a crow in disguise. You can take this particular clause right here, word for word, change it from the entity and make it the killer that blocks said thing. You know, any lockers within X amount of the disguised crow. If a survivor jumps into it, they become locked in. Incorporate this into your killer. Perk-wise, I don't know why anybody would ever run that, because Iron Maiden's a thing. Iron Maiden, I'm pretty sure. Well, let's just look it up. So Iron Maiden, expose status effect, and then for 30 seconds, and their location is revealed to you for 4 seconds. I can just run Iron Maiden, and as soon as they jump out of that locker, regardless of how they do it, they're going to be exposed and go down in one hit. You say that the counter to this is head-on rush, deception, inner strength, healing, and things like that. You're actually incorrect. The survivor cannot leave the locker until the entity unblocks it or locker grabbed by the killer. So within those 13 seconds, the killer can walk all the way up. Did that just update? I swear that just moved. Maybe I'm going crazy. But if the survivor's locked in a locker, it's sort of like the twins. He holds the locker shut, the survivors can't do anything until, you know, they break out, but there is no breakout option here. They're stuck. The killer has to reach into the locker to pick the survivor up in order to get out of this, or they have to wait 13 seconds to be able to get out, and the entity lets them go. So, head on is not a good counter, because if you can get out of the locker before the 13 seconds and the killer comes, you're just going to get out and leave. It's not a direct counter. Deception, only thing that does is, if you try to do a rushed action into a locker, you'll flip the locker open and closed real quick, and then your scratch marks will disappear. Deception's not a counter because you never enter the locker. Inner strength / healing's not a good counter because it's a locker grab. You can be at completely 100% HP, but if you get grabbed from a locker, you're essentially put into the dying state. Well, I guess technically it's the injured state until the killer drops you. Then it's the dying state. But you are grabbed, so you can't do anything. The way, like I said, this needs to be further defined if you're trying to incorporate something, because I cannot read your mind. How it's wrote out, again, you're trapped in a locker for 13 seconds or till killer pulls you out. The only counter to this would be Decisive Strike if you have that activated. Decisive Strike, obviously, as soon as they pull you and pick you up, you can then hit the Decisive Strike trigger and you will be instantly dropped. That's the only thing that I can think of right now that's locker wise. But again, why would I run that when I can just run Iron Maiden, and as soon as you jump out of that locker, I'll be notified that, hey, for the next 30 seconds, if I'm nearby, I can just walk over there, slap this person down because they're exposed. I now know the location of the survivor. So, I mean, this conflicts with Iron Maiden. Also, 13 seconds is ludicrous to be perk wise. Very ludicrous to be incorporated into perks. This being part of the killer's power, because like I said, its tier 3 is kind of weak. All it can do is just essentially transform into a crow and hide. This being incorporated into your killer and, tweaked a little bit to make things, a lot more balanced because you are going to be nearby, would be interesting. It would make survivors think twice about doing specific actions. Take this, shove it up there, expand upon it, make it do something specific to pallets or windows or other things like that survivors are going through as long as you're hitting, nearby as the crow. Then maybe I'll come out of tier 2 and use tier 3 because it'll have some merit. But until then, I can't really, full-heartedly say that Cursed Coffin can actually be employed into the game as it sits. Iron Maiden exists. So I'm going to say maybe, but probably not. And then here's the Hex. Their minds have been filled with delusions. Within each round, the Hex totem will spawn to the nearest totem to the killer, and will spawn 112. 112. Okay. Fake generators that have random progression. If a survivor tries to repair it, they'll scream, notifying the killer. The fake gen then disappears for 10 seconds. 20, 15, 10 sec. What? On a different location. Once the totem is cleansed, the survivor who cleansed it gets the oblivious status effect for 30 seconds. Generator progression transfers to another random gen every 40 seconds. Uses, counters, almost every gen perk. I don't remember all of them, and gen rush. I don't think you understand the actual meaning of the word counter or counteracts or anything like that. Gen perks don't particularly counter this because you're falling into the trap. You're not saying, aha, if I use this perk, I don't have to worry about anything. Clairvoyance might counter the perk because it's not a particularly real gen, so it might not show up on clairvoyance as a lit generator, or the one that shows you where generators are, like I don't remember the name of it. Is it it's not deja vu, is it? I don't know, whatever perk it is, it shows the 3 closest generators at the start of the match, and it shows another one per gen being complete. That might be counteractive to it if it interacts with it and it's, it's a fake generator, so it doesn't show it. If it's coded that way. Those would be counters, ways to get around things like that. I guess gen perks will indirectly counter it by making you fall into the trap and get through it faster, but that's not a counter how we're talking about here. The Hex totem will spawn to the nearest totem to the killer. That is a terrible thing to do because sometimes killer spawns right next to a survivor. and that survivor will immediately destroy that totem. Totems are not meant to be controlled where they spawn. That's why they added rekindled totems to where you can pick. If you want it to spawn at a particular totem, why not at the beginning just have all totems auras shown, and then you can just light a particular totem that you want, as opposed to just forcing it to go somewhere. Give yourself the control that you want by defining the perk to make it, how you want it. And if the behavior elects to see your perk and say, oh, this is neat, then they'll define it in a way that makes it usable to their game. The only thing you want to do now is list everything how your brain sees it, so anybody reading it can get a grasp on what you're talking about. Again, the 112 fake generators and all of that with random progression. This scaling here doesn't matter. Get rid of it. Keep it either one generator or keep it 2 fake generators, which a lot of killers are trying to incorporate fake generators. The problem that I have is, as soon as you touch said generator, the only thing you do is you scream. Then the generator teleports to another location in 10 seconds. Then you have this, oh, it's a hex. If a survivor cleanses my totem, they should have some random, status effect associated with them. It makes no sense for the survivor who cleansed your totem to get the oblivious status effect. This has nothing to do with vision or any type of retribution or anything like that. There's no point in having the oblivious status effect for 30 seconds. That's just something added in to try to butter up the bread. And then the generator progression transfers to a random gen every 40 seconds. The problem I have with the wording right there, you get random progression added to gen. So, one, every time that this particular thing transfers to another gen, you're getting random progression added onto that particular gen. What's stopping survivors from just going to 4 different random generators? One survivor handles 2, another survivor handles 2, the others handle 1 that are nearest to them. And then everybody just touches a generator. It transfers out, you start working on the generators, all of that. The person who screamed obviously is going to go and chase. And then just going to the generator and screaming and getting random amounts of progression on random generators throughout the map. Because to be completely random, because like I said, you're not defining your terminology or how your brain's envisioning this. I could touch a generator and I could get 1% progression on a random generator. Cool. I can also get 40 seconds worth of progression. I can get a complete generator. It is a 1 in 80 chance on what I'm going to get. Or 1 in 80 pick. I guess it's a 1 in 100% chance because 1 in 100 because 100% of a generator, and it's going to be pulling a percent. I'm breaking that down into seconds. It takes 80 seconds to complete a generator. When I talk about gens, I generally talk about seconds instead of percentages because it's easier. It's easier to break down. So you can get 20 extra seconds on a generator just by touching this and then leaving. 10 seconds later, every survivor is just going to hop off and touch a generator, or let go and then retouch a generator. I mean, because you don't say any type of noticeable signs or anything like that. You also don't state if a survivor is already on a generator what happens. So based off what's literally in front of me, I'll just let go of the generator and retouch it. And if I scream, then I know that this generator, I just got progression on my generator. But I mean, it's easy to tell if you're working on a generator and then that bar goes up randomly. You're on an infected generator. So then you let go, you touch it, another generator gets put, and then one survivor just kind of runs around, where every survivor goes back and forth between generators, getting extra time. Anything above 20 seconds of extra time is worth the grab. And like I said, since it's not defined, from 20 to 80, that's essentially 60 different choices you'll have every single time you touch an infected generator to get a positive effect. That is what this perk is leaving a hole open to. Anybody that's gen rushing you, they're just going to let go and then retouch, and if their gen's affected by it, boom, I just got progress to another person's generator. And if you have a series of bad RNG where it goes from one person's generator to another person's generator to another person's generator, and they just keep getting these RNG triggers, gens are gonna fly through even faster. And I know the creator's probably gonna think, well, I'll just add into a clause to where it goes to a empty generator. Problem with you're going to have with that is they're going to know where the other 3 generators are, so they're all going to stay on one particular generator, run over to an empty generator, touch it, go back to the generator they were on, and then the extra 3 generators that they aren't working on are going to continuously get progress. And when they get done with the generators they're working on, they're going to transfer over to one of those extra generators, which blocks off one option. So they're generally either going to work on the one that's mostly done, or they're going to reverse psychology that and work on one that's barely done. So it keeps targeting the same 2 or 3 leftover generators and keep buffing them up till they're complete. So random gen progress isn't going to work that well for you unless it's some sort of illusion. You're also going to have to add in a lot of clauses and a lot more information here so survivors don't use this particular thing against you. That's where the problems are going to have to come from. If the perks went to Osmo's perk concept video, keep note that I sent that suggestion. Let me know if he/his perks are too powerful or weak. Excuse me? Hold. YouTube. He ranks killers, reviewing your Dead by Daylight perk ideas. All 25 killer chase music, rank, things like that. Hold. So, he has started something or a channel and things like that, but he hasn't been doing any type of perk ideas creation forum wise until recently. Interesting. I think somebody might be a content thief. Says like if he was there before, I've never seen his videos. I just started out of the blue because, well, I wanted people to know, how to focus their ideas together. Which, I mean, I could do a collaboration with them someday or something like that if I get bigger. However, I find that interesting that he started doing Dead by Daylight creation forum ideas and things like that, which he's never visited before. Because, I mean, I have been posting on people's videos and things like that, or posts about my video. I also have that post that I keep updating. So he probably seen it, say, oh, that sounds like a good idea. I'm going to use my base to zoom that. That's unfortunate. I'm not mad or anything like that, but can I at least get a shout out or some sort of credit, my dude? Would really help me a decent amount. Or at least a collaboration or something like that. Anyway, let's move on to the next. I've looked at all of this. This killer's going to be a spaceman. Actually, there hasn't been a lot of ideas added here recently. We're looking at one, maybe two a day. This guy posted this concept twice. But yeah, one, maybe two a day. An off day, maybe sometimes even three. But it all balances out to about two a day. So as long as I cover at least two concepts a day, at least, bare minimum, I'm going to stay fairly balanced about things and completely fine. So I think this will be the last concept for the day, because I'm very, very quickly catching back up, and I don't want to go over that little buffer that I have. Space cook, because I don't know if that word's bad or not. I'm going to call it space cook, not the other word. From Scooby-Doo into a killer. I've made the power, perks, map idea, add-on, tell you what to think. I'm open to all kinds of valid criticism, and I love to discuss the concepts. Here's the link to my original Twitter thread. Twitter might be a link that I'd click on. However, I don't want to specifically... Give me a second. I don't want to specifically advertise somebody's Twitter, because then I'm going to have to click on all Twitter links. I try to stay fairly neutral about everything that I do. After my deep dive into everything Scooby-Doo, I worked at it and came up with a concept for a dead-by-day killer that forces survivors to split up and look for clues. Not a very good idea, Dead by Daylight. It's unique, but depending on how you implement this, you might have issues. Put on some groovy chase music, because Spooky Cook may take a second to catch up. And very nicely posted everything. It is kind of small, and instead of clicking on it, I'm just going to zoom in. Alright. So that's add-ons. This is trivia. Okay. Now it says find clues and things like that, and then it says something about speed. Is this going to be a Slenderman style concept? That's what I'm going to guess before I dive into this. Is possibly Slenderman. Slenderman, not Splenderman. Jesus. Do I want to go perks or do I want to go power first? Let's go perks first, something that I usually don't do. I generally like to talk about the power when I review these, and then see how the power is incorporated and helps the particular killer, then see how it either helps or negatively affects other killers, survivors, etc., etc. But I think I'm going to do the perks first and see what changes. And I do it backwards, if anything. So, Afrite. Each time a survivor crouches in your terror radius, Afrite gets 1 token, up to a maximum of 4 tokens. Gain a stackable 5% cooldown reduction for each token on a successful basic attack, up to a maximum of 20%. When you successfully land a basic attack, Afrite loses all tokens. Hold your breath, don't move muscle. Shaky. I mean, it's not bad, but I mean, what is it? It's not unrelenting. Yeah, unrelenting force? No. Unrelenting something. As a 30% miss cooldown effect that goes throughout the entire match. So a fright, unfortunately, is just the same as unrelenting. I feel like I'm getting. It's called unrelenting, right? Unrelenting force. And no, it's just unrelenting. Okay. 30% base. It's 20% in its weakest form. It goes up to 30%. So I can essentially have this perk on at all times at its max level by running unrelenting, or I can increase even more if I just update the perk to tier 3, which gives me a 30%. So a fright we're going to have to say no to unless it does something else. So it's going to have to be either reworked or removed because there's already a better perk available. Lurk. The ore of the hatch can be seen within a 16-meter radius. Each time you grab a survivor, Lurk gains 1 token, up to a maximum of 4 tokens. See the ore of the hatch 8 meters away per token, up to a maximum of 48 meters. If this was old Day by Day, Dead by Daylight, I would say that that's permissible, even though it's very odd. I don't think any other killers have the ability to see hatch. No. So, I mean, anybody who wants to clean up 4-piece kills, great. Due to the new ranking system, though, you don't need to get 4-piece kills anymore to rank up at all. You just need to get those medals. So unfortunately, Lurk's not that strong. But I mean, every killer needs to have a meh perk. Or usually has a meh perk that isn't that great. But I mean, you can run it in particular builds. I don't know in anything besides, meme builds and things like that, why I would run this particular perk. I guess if you're new to the game, or if you're trying to do a streak, or, something memey, like I said, essentially, is when you would run Lurk. Other than that, I mean, it's just meh. It's not good, it's not bad. New ranking system. Like I said, it's all by medals. You can get 3 pieces in the 4th person escape by hatch and still rank up. Just fun. It's not that important. You're no longer penalized for people escaping. And when I say penalized for people escaping, I mean, survivors key dumping and a majority of them escaping mid-match where you haven't had time to get anything done and you're just getting D-ranked because some guy brought a key. Just as an example. Chase sequence. After gaining Bloodlust, all survivors receive a 20% penalty to their repair speed for as long as Bloodlust persists. The artist is gonna hate you, but I can't say that it's not a good idea. But I mean, Thatanophobia changed from being just outright a speed penalty to being survivors injured, things like that. Bloodlust wise, Bloodlust doesn't last very long. So I could go out and as far as to say the repair penalty should actually be increased as opposed to the perk change to make this a very strong pulling perk. It was 20% of 80 is like what, 17? I don't know. It's not 15 because 15 times 5 is what, 75? 60, 75? I think it's 75. So yeah, it's like 17 something. So let's just say 17 seconds. If you're in a chase and you keep your bloodlust here, it's going to take an extra stir. You're in a chase for a long amount of time. For the full 80 seconds, you're adding 17 seconds in. Bloodlust generally, well, bloodlust lasts until you hit a survivor or make some sort of action like breaking pallets. So it can easily be broken at all points or at all times. I would go as far as to say, after gaining bloodlust, all survivors should receive a 100% penalty to their repair speed. So as long as this one survivor that wants to run you around all throughout the day, all throughout the game, and tries to loop you for 5 generators, it's going to take 160 seconds per generator. And I know you're going to say, hey Q, you're always harping about things not being fair to survivors, and and this seemingly isn't fair for somebody to get punished by looping the killer all through 5 gens. Well, the thing is, I'm not punishing the killer per se for looping the killer all 5 gens. I'm punishing the killer, or not punishing the killer, I'm not punishing the survivor for being a good looper in this particular case. Because the survivor can reset the killer's count by dropping a pallet and disappearing for a couple of seconds, stunning them, or just, ending chase, stunning them, and, things like that to break chase. And if you're looping them for 5, generators, and they're making sure that they stay in chase the entire time and keep their attention, I think a killer should have to, or should be able to have some sort of retribution towards that. Because what's going to end up happening here is, if the survivor is making sure that that killer, he's outclassed the killer, or the survivor's outclassed the killer, he's saving all of the pallets, he's running this particular killer around, it forces him to drop pallets. If he drops a pallet, it forces him to stay close to that killer. Because as soon as he drops a pallet, he's going to have to keep that particular killer next to him and interested in him, but he can't let the killer break the pallet or the repair speed comes back to the other survivors. Or, he wants to drop pallets so the repair speed can come back to the other survivors. I said it backwards. The killer doesn't want to particularly break pallets. If it's, 100% repair speed, he can dilly-dally and do whatever he needs to do to that with that particular survivor who keeps running him. And because that particular survivor keeps dropping every pallet on the map and things like that, and not necessarily making the killer break them and things like that, it pulls both ways, making it essentially balanced. And before you start getting outraged and saying it's BS and a whole bunch of things like that. Keep in mind that at the beginning, he said that the killer is sort of pseudo-like, well, he kind of hinted that it's sort of like Slenderman. Slenderman starts out slow and then moves faster as something happens. So this killer is going to be slow, and then the bloodlust is going to essentially take them a little bit higher than base speed. Or it might just take him to base speed. I don't know how much he's nerfed. So if you add in the speed differences and things like that till survivors find more clues, etc., etc., or they can just gen rush the entire time, this also behooves the survivors to find more clues and things like that, as opposed to just gen rushing and getting out because, well, they're tired of this. It's kind of anti, because, once people play against a particular killer, it's cool the first couple of times, but then you get bored of having to find clues every time. People are going to draw this out, it's going to become ridiculous, and they're going to stop playing the game. If you kind of semi-force them to play the game or incur some sort of penalty that can occur because they're not playing the game by, i.e., making their penalty repair speed higher because the killer's staying in chase and not breaking pallets. And there you go. This also brings a whole new light. I mean, does the survivor continue to run this killer? Or does he take give the killer a mercy hit to reset his bloodlust, use that distance to get away, and then keep the killer, at a farther distance away from them? You have to play the game a little bit differently. Like the artist. The artist interrupts loops and makes you play the game a little bit differently. It changes your thought pattern. This killer, with this particular perk, can change people's thought patterns. A 20% decrease of their repair speed is essentially like old school Thatanophobia. And it's not going to last all game. Survivors, or at least people that have played for a long time, the OGs, are used to crappy Thatanophobia coming in and completely destroying you the entirety of the game, It's always being active. They're already used to that. Why not double down and make it, bloodlust that usually doesn't exist that long? Because like I said, the only time this perk gets blown out of proportion is if the survivor is kiting the killer the entire time. And if that's happening, it gives that killer some pushback room. Generally, bloodlust don't last for long. You get that hit, everything's finished. So in essence, you're only going to end up adding like maybe 10 seconds of repair time to generators if you're really bad at using bloodlust. Or if they're looping the heck out of you, you might be able to add up to like 30 extra seconds, but I mean oof. If you're being looped with blood tear or bloodlust tears and 30 seconds have went by, that's an oofer. But it's generally going to be like an extra 5 to 10 seconds before chase is broken, pallets dropped, or a hits happen, or something of that nature. So chase sequence, I would go on the boat of buffing to 100% penalty repair speed. I want it to be slow, and I want it to be painful, and I want all survivors to know that as long as your dickhead survivor's running around and running me for all 5 rounds and nothing's happening, you're going to essentially spend double the amount of time repairing gens. See what his power is. The spaceman can quickly jump into a locker and choose any locker on the map to move to. I went over a killer that had locker teleports. I believe it's another vampire. In a locker, hold spacebar to jump out of a locker and injure survivor. I went over a pseudo ninja concept that allowed survivors to jump out of a locker and injure a survivor. Well, he wanted to kill them out of a locker. And I was like, nah, bro, you can't just be jumping out of lockers and assassinating people even if you're a ninja or a shade or anything like that. That's not how this game's designed. The spaceman moves 0.2 meters per second faster while cloaked. So he can jump in and out of lockers, he can teleport between lockers, he can jump out of a locker to injure a survivor, and now he can cloak. When revealed, he would trigger a killer instinct on the survivor that revealed him for 30 seconds. Okay, now you're just Ghostface. Okay, man. Now you're pulling Ghostface into this. His cloak ability has a cooldown of 60 seconds before the spaceman can be revealed again. How old is this tweet? It's fairly new. So you've essentially taken other people's ideas from the forum. Ghostface's ability, and then a Wraith ability, and then through Killer Instinct, well, that's Ghostface's ability, and shoved it all in one. A forum idea, which, I mean, the forum idea could be based off of your idea, and they could have said it's neat, but like I said, I'm not saying anything about plagiarism. Just saying that I've seen it before on the forum. That idea's there. Wraith idea. plus ghost-faced idea. And I say wraith because of the term cloaked. I'm going to assume something on this particular spaceman becomes harder to see. But I mean, cloak could be like the cloak of Ghostface. In that case, I could be wrong. And it could just be Ghostface and a form idea mixed together. Either way, it has the obvious things of it's Ghostface. You've already thrown Scooby-Doo on top of this, so I can't say anything about alternative killers for Ghostface or anything like that, so that's already out of the question. So this, unfortunately, will not become that. Now, if you got rid of all the Scooby-Doo, redesigned everything to be completely different, maybe we could talk. But until then, it's not an alternative killer. It won't get its own episode or anything like that, or recording-wise. The investigation. The spaceman starts on investigation 3. Staying at high tier of investigation allows the spaceman to lurk in shadows. Survivors can progressively reduce the spaceman's tier by finding 4 clues hidden in 4 lockers across the map. For every 2 clues found, investigation loses a tier. If survivors have to interact with lockers and things like that, I would ask that you define what happens if different survivors and killers and they coincide. If the survivor's in a locker, does it prevent the killer from going to the locker? Or does the killer teleport to the locker and survivor automatically jump out? Do they get kicked out? Are they alerted? What happens? A little bit more detailed if survivors and killers are in the same area, things like that. I think need to be explained because somebody's going to ask the question eventually. Investigation 3, the spaceman's footprints are hidden. Do what now? Oh, because it's based off Scooby-Doo. I do remember the episode. But I mean, you can actually drop the whole thing about footprints and all of that. You're already, what I'm going to assume is a slow, well, you said 4.4. You're already a, yeah, I can see it down there, 4.4. So you're already a slower moving killer. I don't know if you would want people to see where your footprints are going or coming from, because it kind of defeats the purpose of the undetectable status effect, you know? You already have the ghost face mojo, to where if anybody looks at you, you know, boom, you're going to get killer instinct. It doesn't say anything about being able to tell the direction of anybody looking at you, though. It's only the person that reveals you. So that particular part of Ghostface that makes Ghostface good, I'm going to assume no longer exists because I'm going off the literal sayings of things. I'm not going to assume that it works exactly like Ghostface. I'm going to assume that it works exactly as written. Footprints are hidden. Undetectable status effect. Locker travel cooldown is 2 seconds, but it never says how long it takes to go between lockers or what happens. The spaceman has a normal vaulting time of 1.3 seconds. I assume that's regular vaulting, and if it is regular vaulting, I don't think it needs to be said there. Investigation 2. Footprints are no longer hidden. Reduced movement speed of 4.5. .6 meters per second. So it's the same. It's 4.6 when you're in Investigated 3. Investigation 2, you reduce to 4.5 meters per second. Footprints are no longer hidden. You have an increased vaulting time of 1.4 seconds. Investigation 1. So you still have the undetectable status effect, so I would add that in here. But I mean, I guess you can assume that goes there regardless. Investigation 1, Spaceman loses his constant undetectable status effect. Oh, it's constant. So that's going to be the change in between. Ghostface comes out of his undetectable status effect when he hits something or when he swings or gets exposed. Now I need to go back to the top and 60-second cloak. Gotcha. Also, the killer instinct on the survivor for 30 seconds is ridiculous, but I'll get to that. Okay. Investigator 3, undetectable constant, or his constant undetectable status is gone. Whatever that means. I don't know if that means that his ability to go undetectable goes away, or if it turns into like Ghostface's and when he hits it disappears. I do not know. The locker traveling ability increased to 10-second cooldown. The Spaceman has a reduced movement speed of 4.4 meters per second and an increased vaulting time of 1.6. Now that I've went over everything, I mean, there's obvious things. One, here, the Spaceman moves at 0.2 meters per second faster while cloaked. If I take this by how it's literally said, until you get, well, he can, unless this changes his cloaking ability when he gets to Investigation 1, he's actually going to move a lot faster than 4.6. He's going to be at 4.8. So, having to reduce movement speed of 4.5 and 4.4, I'm assuming is when he's no longer cloaked, but that also makes no sense. So now I have contradictory statements that I kind of need some explanation on. You state that the Spaceman moves 0.2 meters per second faster while cloaked. But he stays completely cloaked until revealed. And then what exactly does the word cloak mean to you? Because if it gets down to Investigation 1 and you lose your constant undetectable status effect, that means when you're not cloaked, you lose your undetectable status effect. So when you're not cloaked, you're not cloaked. But when you're in 2 and 3, even if you're not cloaked, you're still cloaked because you're undetectable. So you have 2 cloaking abilities here. One that activates regularly that you can keep applying to yourself, and then one that's passive that you lose once it gets to Investigation 1. That's the main issue that you run into here. If there's something that I'm not understanding, I think this needs to be defined to where it's a lot clearer read. And then the 0.2 meters per second faster when cloaked. So when you manually cloak, you are 0.2 meters per second faster. That is what that literally says. So when you force that cloak upon yourself, you're going to be moving at actually 4.8. But then you get to Investigation 3. Now that's regular. Investigation 2. Now, when you're not cloaked, you're going to move at 4.5, but when you are cloaked, you're going to move at 4.7. When you get to 1, you're going to be moving at regular speed while cloaked, and then slower when uncloaked. That's how I'm processing everything right now, as it says. Obviously, the killer instinct on the survivor for 30 seconds is ludicrous and ridiculous, and I don't even know how that seemed okay at any point when this killer can move even faster than base speed unless investigation 2 or 1 or uncloaked. Or 2 and 1 and uncloaked. 30 seconds is ridiculous. You need to keep that down to like 4 or 5. Just keep it to whatever Ghostface says, because that's what you're going off of. Just use Ghostface as sort of a template. Because this would be a decent alternative killer for Ghostface if it wasn't licensed to Scooby-Doo. But that's one of kind of the primary rules that I follow, is if it's part of a chapter concept, if it's licensed from somebody else or anything like that, it no longer qualifies for an alternative killer. I mean, I could go and do, because I mean, I have made some exceptions, but I mean, this is a rule that I've instated somewhat recently. The first Frozen concept of the Frozen Queens and things like that, I think I did make a pseudo exception. In a couple of videos I've made some exceptions. But I mean, I think I need to go ahead and put the last nail in the coffin and make that just a primary rule. Very good concept. I do like it. So don't get me wrong. I'm not just harping just to harp, like I always say towards the end. I want to first identify, causes, concerns, and errors that I personally see. Then I'll give you my comments on everything afterwards. This isn't a bash fest. This is me just explaining things how I see it, and then I'll go back afterwards and, say the things that I like. But yeah, the killer instinct should be decreased to like 4 or 5 seconds. I would go as far as to say 4 seconds, because like with barbecue and chili and what I always say daily now, you don't need to know everywhere that the particular survivor goes. You just need to know the location and which direction they're heading afterwards. 4 seconds, you can ascertain whether the survivor is just going to hide behind the rock or if they're going to run in any particular direction. After that, you generally will have eyes on anyway and be able to instigate a chase. So you don't need 30 seconds. That's ridiculous. His cloak ability has a cooldown of 60 seconds before the spaceman can be revealed again. So it's an automatic cloak that applies itself. So cloak by base is you walk around with cloak. When somebody reveals you, you know where they are for X amount of time. After 60 seconds, the cloak applies itself again. Gotcha. So it's essentially how Ghostface works, but it's all taken care of for you. You ain't got to think about it. Which is good for some people, but bad for some. If I just recently hook somebody and my cloak automatically activates and they reveal me immediately, that's going to be kind of a piss off. Or if I'm chasing a survivor, I don't necessarily want the cloak again randomly when I can do what I do with Ghostface. When they're hiding behind an LT wall or something like that, I fake cloak and then go back around the way I faked because they can't see my red stain anymore. And easily get those hits for the most part. So, Killer Instinct, the cloaking ability is kind of meh, but then you also have the undetectable status effect, which does the same thing as the cloaking ability, except for You can't just be looked at and pulled from that. But the cloak itself, this cloaking ability, I would call it something else. I don't know, call it Dead Man's Revenge, or I don't know, just some random name and not call it a cloak. Because cloak and undetectable status effect essentially does the same thing. The only thing that this does is allows you to see people that are looking at you. It doesn't say anything here about potentially turning invisible, but it's so close to Ghostface that it makes you assume that it does the same thing Ghostface does. The only thing it says by definition is anybody that looks at you, you know where they are. So it's not necessarily a cloak. It can be some sort of instinctual or ghostly type of desire, you know. You're looking at me. I'm going to now pursue you and attack you or something like that. Or you're looking at me, now I'm looking at you. If this was changed and not used in the word cloak, this would make a lot more sense. Now, if it does do the same thing that Ghostface does, and it does actually provide the undetectable status effect and things like that, that needs to be explained here as well. Because it's either the same as Ghostface, or it's Ghostface but nerfed. The undetectable status effect comes from doing clues, which you don't lose until they get to investigation 1. My question is there's 4 clues hidden in 4 lockers across the entire map. What happens when they get the 4th clue? Oh, no, it's every 2. Oh, you start at 3, they find 2, you go to 2, they find 2 more, they go to 1. Gotcha. This killer doubles with Iron Maiden very well. Unless finding clues in lockers or searching is just another particular action that you have to, like, hold an alternative button on a locker for 10 seconds or something to grab clue, then it doesn't. But if they have to jump into the locker to particularly find a clue and it gives it to you when you jump in the locker, Iron Maiden stacks very well. Very, very, very well. My only question is I wonder why well, I mean, I guess I know why you use lockers, because, well, there's lockers everywhere on the map. But it kind of makes me interested why you didn't use chests. Special chests that are hidden throughout the map. And, you know, hard to find places, etc., etc., and then more chests added on top of that. So there's just chests everywhere that you have to open, look through, and all that for clues. But I mean, lockers are fine too. You're just gonna have to work around that, because if a survivor is looking through a locker or something like that, and it's a search feature, and you teleport to that locker, what happens? Does it just slam shut on them, or, you know, that needs to be explained. The rest of this is fine. Like I said, I really enjoy this particular killer concept because it's going to change the way the game works. It's just how it's implemented. It's flushed out. You can tell that it's been ran through a couple of times, but it's not completely bug-free. Some things do need to be changed. Add-ons, I don't... we'll leave the iridescent ones. Allows the spaceman to see the auras of check lockers. Not that great. If anything, you would want to see that just passively, but that's not very great for an iridescent add-on. I would definitely drop that in rarity and put something else up for iridescent. Every time you hook a survivor, gain a tier of investigation and leave another clue in a random locker. No clues appear at the beginning of the trial. What does this mean? A maximum of 2 clues can exist in the trial at one time or all together. Each clue found lowers investigation a tier, so it's 1 for 1. Start the match at investigation 1. I don't know if I could potentially agree. It's very well balanced, but it's very awkward. It's kind of RNG based. Because, like, every time you hook a survivor, you gain a tier of investigation. Okay. And then another clue goes into a random locker. Okay. The problem with that, also, most iridescent, let me back up. Most iridescent add-ons you can stack together to get a decent build. Both of these iridescent add-ons do not stack together very well, because as soon as you hook a survivor, you get a tier back and another clue goes into another locker. So unless the auras to check lockers resets or anything like that, it makes no point of running these two together. If you look at any killer's iridescent add-ons, most of them run together in some way, shape, or form to create like an ultimate build. It's another reason why I say you should drop this a tier and then rewrite something else. Which, the way things are, this one's popping up, how it's super long and kind of a little bit convoluted. Why not break this up in two and make Ghostcraft and Skull Mask, both of these, incorporate all of these together, and then add or remove, whatever's necessary. But as it sits now, every time you hook a survivor, you gain a tier of investigation. And you leave another clue in a random locker. Only problem I have with that from the start is the flip side of that. Only 2 maximum clues can exist in a trial at one time. So you are severely decreasing survivor being able to find these clues. Unless you get the absolute worst RNG in the world and they just spawn right by survivors. It's not very well met in this unique balancing that you tried to do here, which is why I think this should be broken up. Every time you hook a survivor, gain a tier of investigation. Second clause, no clues appear at the beginning of the trial. How long? I'm just going to throw out a random number and say the first 60 seconds or whatever. But I mean, generally, survivors are going to go straight for gens anyways. They're not going to go searching for investigations right off the start. Right off the start of a match. So no clues appearing at the beginning of the trial. Which, unless you have something that identifies your killer as who they are, they're not even going to know what killer they're after or they're up against. So they're going to go to gens. So the no clues appearing at the beginning of the trial doesn't actually need to be included here. A maximum of two clues can exist in the trial. You might want to add in the clause at one time. So that doesn't look kind of weird. Each clue found lowers investigation a tier. It's now 1 clue instead of 2, but 2 clues in any locker that exists in a particular map is kind of bullshit. 4, you know, you're kind of pushing it, but survivors can find that if they go into the correct area. The map that comes to mind when I'm thinking of locker mayhem and just absolute piss somebody off is the Plague's match. Or, yeah, the Plague. Her map underneath where you have that little area that has like, what, 6 or 8 lockers just stacked. That's going to be one of the areas you have to check every time. And if there's nothing in any of those lockers, you're kind of screwed. There's lockers throughout that entire map. The snow map. There's lockers in areas that I rarely even go to, and I probably wouldn't even think to check those areas in that particular snow map. Midwich is one of the bigger ones. There are lockers in rooms that don't even contain generators, and you're gonna have to go throughout your go out of your way to search through those. There's no clauses or anything like that that shows, you know, survivors the ores of check lockers. Instead of the spaceman, you could make survivors can see ores of check lockers. So they're not running around checking the same lockers. That clause there, change the survivors, could be added to this. You know, recycle ideas. So the killer is getting all of the benefit here, and the only negative that he's getting from this super overpowered iridescent add-on, which, I mean, iridescents are supposed to be overpowered, but not incorporated like this, is if they do manage to find one of the 2 notes in the map, you just go down 1 tier. Then all you have to do is just hook somebody and bam, you're right back up there again. Hooking somebody don't take that long. Very easy to do. And bam, you're already back up. So all of this, I would definitely rework. I wasn't even going to look at add-ons because the behavior devs, if they do take this concept, they're going to write their own add-ons. But, yeah. Honestly, at the point, instead of writing all of this and giving the survivors any little type of hope, why don't you just make it to where your investigation tier just can't go down? You could simplify all of that. Investigation tier no longer goes down. Simple as that. But I figured I would Survivors reveal Spaceman will see Madness tier 3. Yeah, I'm just gonna scroll on down past that. That's those add-ons are a little meh. This is just trivia, things like that. So this particular thing's fixed. Then they give you the mansion and all of that, where the Scooby-Doo team went in and faced the spaceman. Why do I just like vaguely remember a boat too? Because he's the guy that had the like when he laughed, his spacesuit blinked, right? And he was like, ah, and his spacesuit would blink every time he laughed. That's the one, right? Could be wrong, but I think that's the guy. Let me pull this back out to 100%. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. Prop hunt mode in DBD could be fun. Definitely could be. But I mean, if they were going to initiate a prop hunt and or hide and seek, like I said, the artist is perfect for hide and seek. I played hide and seek during the public test beta against an artist. It was one of the funnest experiences that I had, and it was refreshing because it was something different. Scrolled his video real quick. It seems that he takes YouTube comments as a perk idea. He doesn't check the forum. Nice. It was nice to join for even longer than a moment. Always Galanonim, but I have to go see ya. Hope you enjoyed what you seen. As always, nice to see you. Stop by whenever you want. Prop hunt, I do think if they did incorporate that in a Dead by Daylight, it would be absolutely amazing. 100% without a doubt. But I mean, you already have this cat and mouse game. You can literally make the pig be like prop hunt person that goes and search for things or anything like that. It could be any killer technically. Hide and seek would definitely be good for the artist. Possibly the pig because she has stealth or ghost face or anything like that. But the artist is particularly good because you shoot things, and if you hit somebody with it, they get crows around them. And if you're close to them, you get that killer instinct. So you can use crows to essentially search areas as you're running around and things like that, which makes it very good. So I very much dominate the artist for hide and seek. Prop hunt wise, I don't know what killer would be good for prop hunt. Definitely not the crow because prop hunt's all about, going and finding things. I mean, they do get hints and things like that, but crow's too OP for prop hunt. You can literally just launch a crow in an area, get killer instinct, and then bop somebody. But whatever they decide to go with would be fun. Oh well, that's for another modder. Maybe if you find a modder of Dead by Daylight, you can. I know one guy in particular that would probably do it for free if I asked him to, but you kind of don't want to call in favors for something trivial. It would be fun. It would be a fun mod that if given to everybody else, would be cool till behavior said, nah, bro, you're done. Because they'll probably eventually patch it out like they patch out all other mods for Dead by Daylight that they don't like. Because if it comes out, then they have to work towards, is that Stone Cold Steve Austin? If it comes to light that somebody's created a pseudo prop hunt, then they are gonna have to deal with all the comments and everything else of everybody saying, "Hey, man, make this prop hunt mod, live and all of this other things," and then they're gonna have to go through and cancel anything that they're working on and go back in and do that, or they're gonna have to bear the wave of people wanting prop hunt and then till that dies down, and it's gonna cause a lot of problems. Got quite a bit done off the forum today. I think I spent like 3 hours doing it. At least it feels like that. Cancel anything that they're, yeah, around 3 hours. It's only 12:12 p.m. So what's gonna happen here is I'm going to disappear. I'm going to hop on Restream, and then I'm going to stream Splinter Cell. Probably a mission. Might be part of a mission, might be a full mission. I know I'm kind of in the crux of something right now, and things have gotten interesting, so I might just send the whole thing through. Might leave it on another cliffhanger. I don't know. Depends on how, everything works. Restream has been very chunky, very bulky, very laggy as of late. I put it on Twitch. I have gotten more viewers on Twitch than I have on YouTube thus far. So I kind of still want to do Restream, even though I know it's not going to turn out as great as it could be because of all the frame issues. It's not caused by my computer. It's caused by just. It's not caused by my computer or my internet. It's just Restream doing its thing. I didn't pay for the premium, so I only get 720p at 30 FPS. So it's going to be a bit blocky, regardless of what I do. If Twitch shows no interest, though, I could be convinced to just stream it like I'm doing now, where everything's, good, and just stream it to YouTube. I would like to do both, because I'm playing through every single Splinter Cell. Oh, by the way, somebody else is now playing through the original version of Splinter Cell. So they must have seen that I was playing through it, or they seen the cell that Splinter Cell was free on Uplay. I doubt it. Most people don't open Uplay up regularly. But they elected to try their hand in it too. I think they got like 70 people or something like that, which is cool. Good for them. Just said, anytime you have an idea, especially as a streamer, you gotta keep an open mind, because somebody's essentially going to steal that idea. Or they're gonna have, they're gonna have the same idea. I can go out and do something extremely random, but I guarantee you somebody's either done it before, or somebody's going to adapt and pick up the idea, if it brings views. That's how life goes. You gotta accept it. And if you want to be competitive, you just need to put out better content. He has better content. I don't have access to my second monitor, so I can't communicate with chat and do funny things, and I don't have the setup and the nice mic and everything else, and Restream's not working with me. My controller's not working with me. And I don't have a huge amount of experience to, push back as hard. So he's going to steamroll me anytime that he's streaming Splinter Cell that I am. And he gets like 70 people that go in and watch him play, so I guess he's an obviously chill dude, so it is what it is. Eventually, I'd hope to get everything fixed, new controller, probably even upgrade my computer. It doesn't really need it, but why not? Definitely get another monitor hooked up. I might just buy 2 brand new monitors, because that might be the issue. My monitor I have now, that I've used for a long time, might not be particularly compatible with anything else, because it is plugged into DVI. What I could try is getting a DVI splitter or a DVI to USB converter if they exist. I know a DVI splitter exists, and I could try to hook in another screen that way. But if it don't work, that's a waste. But I'd need another DVI cable too. Could always hook everything up HDMI too and see if it works that way. But I don't know. This graphics card has HDMI, USB, DVI, and VGA all on it. It's got everything. So, I don't know. There's other options. It worked before Windows 11, though, is what gets me. When there was Windows 10, the monitor worked perfectly. Updated to Windows 11, it hasn't responded since. So I don't know if the monitor well, no, because it didn't go out, because I can still watch TV and do all kinds of other things, put my cell phone's thing on it, or what my cell phone's seeing on it, all of that. Switches to PC, switch through all the other input options and things like that, it all stays black. Never shows. Tried going into BIOS, or tried going into the graphics card setting itself to set everything up just in case. Tried device settings, tried going to the website of the TV producer, and tried going through all of that. It's a Samsung. and nothing has helped me fix this problem thus far, so I just kind of said screw it, and now it just sits on its own to the side. So that's unfortunate. So I am going to go probably get some food and everything first, and then I'm going to hop on Restream and we can start continuing Splinter Cell where we left off. Anybody that stopped by is generally interested or like what they see, I encourage you to leave a like. Subscription, it's kind of meh. If you do like and subscribe, just make sure you turn off the bell so you're not needlessly notified every time I go live for this or that. Unless you want to be. That's what I tell people. Everybody's like, comment, subscribe, click the bell. I'm like, comment, subscribe, then turn the bell off. Because, well, I have a lot of subscriptions and I have the bell turned off on all but, the primary ones that I watch daily. Because I don't want every time somebody posts a video just flooding me. But, I mean, I also occasionally get comments and things like that on different posts and things that I comment on, so I want to keep those relevant as well. So, that's a thing too. But, as always, supplement your lifestyle. Stay cool, stay